Lucas shielded his eyes as the desert sun glared mercilessly overhead. The air wavered in the distance, blurring the sharp edges of the dunes framing the archaeological site. In the year since Mina had walked out of his life, he hadn't dared to think about what it would be like to see her again, least of all here, amid the dust, maps, and fragments of civilizations past. When the project proposal had landed on his desk 2 weeks ago, an ambitious cross-border expedition to recover missing artifacts, he had barely glanced at the list of collaborators. Why would he? His focus had been on the geography, the timetable, the logistics. It wasn't until he'd arrived and seen her name scrawled in loose cursive on a clipboard that the world had dipped slightly beneath his feet. Mina Liang. And now there she was, standing opposite him, her caramel eyes widened with mutual disbelief. She hesitated only for a second before recovering herself, her professional mask slipping into place like a shield. "Well," she said dryly, forcing a smile that didn't quite touch her eyes, "this is unexpected." Lucas managed a polite nod. His own voice felt lodged somewhere between his chest and throat. She tilted her head, studying his face, as if searching for remnants of the man she'd left. He wondered what she saw: a thinner frame, sharper angles to his jaw, the faint dark shadows pressed beneath his eyes? Or did she see what he desperately hoped to keep hidden, the raw ache of things unsaid? "We'll keep it professional," she said finally, her tone clipped. A command meant as much for herself as for him. The next few days passed in a whirl of work, leaving the two of them little room to address, or even acknowledge, their tangled history. The team set up camp around the ruins of an ancient trade route, following fragments of old desert maps to locate stolen relics thought to have been smuggled into seclusion. It was painstaking work, measuring distances, deciphering esoteric symbols, and poring over mistranslated scripts for clues. But tension between Lucas and Mina buzzed constantly in the background, like static before a storm. They avoided being alone together deliberately, almost comically, until a missing porter forced the team to split up in search groups. By some merciless twist of fate, Lucas and Mina ended up as an unintended pair. They walked in silence through the rippling sea of sand, their shadows long and distinct under the setting sun. Mina clutched her satchel, her brow furrowed as she scanned the horizon. "You don't have to sound so reluctant when you talk to me," Lucas said finally, breaking the silence. His voice was low, but it carried. Mina's steps faltered. "Excuse me?" "You're acting like just being around me is some sort of punishment," he said, his shoulders stiffening. There was a rawness to his tone now, emotions he'd buried deep, threatening to claw to the surface. "I get that things ended badly between us, but you don't think I deserve at least some civility?" Mina froze and turned toward him, her features conflicted. "You don't." She stopped herself, biting her bottom lip. Her hesitation only fanned the frustration burning in Lucas's chest. "Say it," he pressed, his green eyes narrowing. "Whatever it is you've been holding back all this time, go ahead." "You lied to me," she said quietly, and there it was, the word that had shattered them. It came out of her like a slap carried by years of suppressed hurt. "You lied, Lucas, "I didn't lie," he interrupted, his voice sharp. "I tried to explain what happened, but you wouldn't even hear me out. You jumped to conclusions and... You think I wanted to walk away from us?" She shot back, her voice breaking slightly. "I did everything to trust you, and then I saw those texts from her, Lucas. How could I not believe what I saw?" Lucas clenched his fists, his frustration mounting. "Those texts? Are we seriously going back to those?" Lucas said, his voice tinged with exasperation. "Mina, for God's sake, how many times do I have to tell you? There was nothing between me and Elena." She was a colleague, one who clearly couldn't respect boundaries, but I never, not for 1 second, reciprocated anything. Mina's chest heaved, her breath unsteady. She looked away, the defeated slump of her shoulders tugging painfully at his resolve. She whispered. "I thought I wasn't enough. I thought you wanted her." Lucas's anger crumbled instantly, replaced by a wave of excruciating tenderness. He took an unconscious step toward her before stopping himself. "Mina, you were always enough. You were more than enough. Whatever you thought you saw, it wasn't real. What we had, that was real." The air between them crackled, heavy with a year's worth of blame, regret, and longing. She closed her eyes for a long moment, her lashes trembling. When she opened them again, something in her gaze had softened, though the guilt remained an ache that visibly contorted her expression. "I wanted to believe you so much, Lucas," she murmured, "but I was scared. It felt easier to walk away than risk being hurt even worse." His heart bled at the confession. He studied the woman standing before him, so proud yet so vulnerable, and realized he'd never truly stopped loving her. He doubted he could ever stop. They stood like that for what felt like an eternity, two people grappling with a maze of hurt and love, too complex to untangle in one night. But as Mina's hand brushed against his, tentative and trembling, Lucas knew they could try. The days that followed were strange and sweet all at once. Working together, really together this time, they found themselves falling into old rhythms. The moments of quiet companionship as they combed through puzzles left by the fragments of stone grew gentler, softer. For the first time in a year, Lucas saw Mina smile without reservation, a quirk of lips brightening her face like a sunrise. God, how he missed that. But every time they slipped into something that felt too close to the way things had been, Lucas would catch the flicker of hesitation in her eyes, the shadow of her guilt. She carried the weight of their past like an anchor, afraid to let the memory of her mistakes drown them again. Lucas, however, had begun carrying a different weight, one he was trying desperately to hide. The dizzy spells had started months ago, long before the expedition. He had blamed the fatigue on overwork until the diagnosis had hit him like a storm. He could neither fight nor outrun, an untreatable genetic disorder, its progression relentless. It wasn't the illness gnawing at him now, though. It was the knowledge that Mina's guilt had no place in the time they had left. And so Lucas threw himself into the work. They deciphered symbols and unearthed relics long lost to history, laughed over missteps, and relished the burgeoning hope between them. He became her anchor this time, even as his body quietly betrayed him. But as his strength waned, the cracks started showing. One evening after camp dinner, Mina caught him leaning heavily against a support beam, his shoulders slumped with exhaustion, her brows furrowed. "Lucas, what's wrong?" He opened his mouth to downplay it, but then he stopped. What was the point of hiding it now? He deserved to share the truth with her, however much it hurt. "Mina," he began, his voice unnervingly steady, "there's something I need to tell you." Her expression fell as he outlined the nature of his illness. The color drained from her face, and when he finally looked up, tears shimmered in her eyes. I don't understand," she whispered, her voice cracking against the weight of disbelief. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want to burden you," he admitted, his throat tightening. "You've carried so much guilt because of what happened between us. If I told you sooner," he trailed off. Mina's tear-laden gaze hardened into something deeper, more resolute. "How dare you think I wouldn't want to be here for you?" she said fiercely.